Edward Lord joins us today for the last of our interviews with Middlesex's board directors. Edward, thanks ever so much firstly for joining us. Now, you joined Middlesex's board last year as part of our restructure. How much are you enjoying your time governing the club?
It's a really amazing experience, and I consider it a huge privilege to have been invited to join the board. I've been a Middlesex member since 1997, and so to be a member of the board now and taking part in making decisions about the future of the club, it's really exciting.
For those that aren't aware, Edward, I know you've got a very strong background in sports administration. You've previously had roles with the FA and with the governing body of swimming, the ASA, and you're now involved in the governing body of basketball in England. How different have you found the world of administration in cricket?
Well, I know all sports administration has some similarities. You inevitably end up talking about players' contracts, you end up talking about fixtures. There's been a lot of similarity, of course, during these recent months when we were dealing with COVID. Cricket has its own peculiarities, of course. The relationship that we have with the ECB and with MCC adds colour to the arrangements, but no, there are generally similarities, and it's useful to have that crossover of experience.
Good stuff. Now, I know you're an elected politician, Edward. Can you expand upon your own background just to give members a bit of an insight into your previous working roles?
Yeah, sure. I started life really as a fundraiser and doing public relations, so a little bit like the work you do for Middlesex. So I worked at City University in London, and before that at Liverpool John Moores University as their development director. I then set up my own freelance practice, initially working with charities and other organisations on fundraising and communications, but I also developed a set of skills around corporate governance, around risk, and around people. And then that also brought into play my personal interest around diversity and inclusion. And I've been doing that now for 18 years, at the same time as being an elected councillor in the City of London, a magistrate, and sitting on various boards and committees.
Busy times for you. Now, Edward, you mentioned you've been a Middlesex member since '97. How did your arrival onto the board come about? And I guess, as a member, how proud are you to now be serving the club in governing its future?
Well, I came onto the board following the restructure that we did at the start of 2019, and I'd been part of that process. In fact, through my consultancy work, I'd been commissioned to rewrite the club rules. So the rules that we now operate by were substantially authored by me. When I was doing that, I had no idea that when the board was looking for a new set of skills to join, I would match some of those skills. And it was only when the advert came out that I thought, actually, do you know what? I can do some of this stuff. Yeah, so I applied. I think there were about 18 people who applied. And through a process of interview and selection, I was appointed to the board. It's an enormous privilege to have been appointed. It's great to be able to get to know more members, to get to know our players and our staff. These are very exciting times for Middlesex. I think we've got a great club with an enormous future.
Edward, you mentioned those skills and the need to diversify the skills across the board. That's probably one of the biggest differences I've noticed with our board today to perhaps boards of old, in that we used to be criticised perhaps for being too focused purely on cricket. And nowadays you look at that breadth of knowledge and breadth of skills across the board as a real asset to the club. What do you specifically bring from your background, and what do you add around the boardroom table?
Well, I think my skills are primarily around corporate governance, how we do our business, making sure that we're managing risk properly, but also my passion for diversity and inclusion. So those are, I would say, are my skills. But I think it's really important to remember that, we're running a cricket club, but the cricket club is much more than just the men's first 11. It's all of the teams that we run, our men's team, our women's team, our diversity, disability squads. And the board needs to be across all of those areas. But also we're running a business. Our turnover is between £7 and £8 million a year. and we need the skills on our board to make sure that we can properly oversee the running of those finances and the employment contracts and all that kind of thing.
Absolutely. Well, you chair the Remuneration Committee, which is one of a number of committees the club established to focus on the key areas of the business. Can you explain for those watching what that group is responsible for?
Well, Remuneration Committee is making sure we have proper oversight as a board on the salaries that we pay to our players and to our senior staff. As I said, we're quite a sizable business, and it is right that when we're applying members' money, and it is members' money, to paying our staff, that we're doing so in a proper and transparent way, that there is oversight of that, and that we can justify the decisions that are being made. So the group that I chair has responsibility for providing some degree of check and challenge to the chief executive in terms of the decisions that he is making on who gets paid what.
Okay, the constraints that the current COVID crisis has put on the club obviously led to, it was well publicised, our players taking a voluntary pay cut, staff taking a voluntary pay cut. It must have been an extremely challenging time as chair of that committee, because I guess that was sat right front and foremost in that committee's decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to pay tribute to all of our staff throughout the entire club for making the contribution that they made to make sure that we remain financially stable and able to deliver cricket and to be the governing body for the recreational game in Middlesex. I think we are in a remarkably strong position compared to many other cricket clubs. I know sometimes it seems hard that we, unlike most of our county contemporaries, don't have our own ground. But in many ways, it's very helpful at the moment that we don't have our own ground, and instead we have our partnership with MCC, because many of the county sides are suffering quite difficult circumstances because of the borrowing that they've taken on in order to make their grounds better. We don't have that imposition on us, but nonetheless, it is challenging.
Absolutely. The game is obviously under enormous financial pressure, as you say. What specific challenges do you think lay ahead of Middlesex coming through COVID?
Well, I think we are very lucky that we've got David Kendricks as treasurer and Richard Goatley as our chief executive, because they are doing an enormous amount of work to make sure that we remain financially stable. But inevitably, we are in a position where we have less money coming through the books than we would normally have. So we're not getting ticket sales. Of course, there is a risk that some of our sponsors may question whether they want to continue, given they're not getting the value they would normally get. So those, I think, are the principal challenges that we're facing as a result of COVID. But I know that we have enormous support from our members. I know we have enormous support from our sponsors, and all the other stakeholders that are involved in Middlesex Cricket. And I think that together we can get through this, and we'll return hopefully to what looks more like a normal season next year.
Absolutely, one certainly hopes so. Edward, aside of your position as a board director, as someone that has a genuine love of the game, you must be over the moon, I guess, that we're now back playing. Season starts on Saturday. We're at the Oval in front of crowds with some Middlesex members there. This coming weekend, cricket again being played in front of crowds. It's great to be getting back to some kind of normal, isn't it?
Oh, Fletch, I can't tell you how exciting it was. I mean, I was lucky enough to be at the pilot at the Oval on Sunday, and just to see people sitting their places, watching our teams play, and hearing the applause when they came on to the ground. It's just really, really exciting, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to both the Bob Willis Trophy and indeed to the T20 competition in September, and hopefully we'll be able to get many more people into grounds by that stage.
I certainly hope so. Well, look, that being the case, Edward, I guess like all of our other directors I've spoken to, you're pretty keen to chat to members. They can now put a name to the face. When we're back and crowds are in,
Yeah, absolutely. And they can always reach me through the club office, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions that they've got, particularly around the areas of responsibility that I've got in terms of remuneration and diversity and inclusion.
Edward, that's brilliant. Thanks ever so much. Look, this chat brings us to the end of our series of interviews with Middlesex's board directors. I think members have found them all very enlightening. I'd like to thank you for your time. It's been really good chatting to you.
Well, thanks, Fletch. Great to talk to you too.
Thanks, Edward.